Good morning. For the next few weeks, we are going to be reading The Last Holiday Concert together by Andrew Clements. We will read 2 chapters most days. Some days we'll only read 1 chapter, but we are going to start with the first 2 chapters today. So chapter 1 is titled Palmer Kids. Hart Evans sat in the front row at the second big assembly of the year. The kids from the last few homerooms hadn't found their seats yet, so there was plenty of noise. Hart turned and looked around the auditorium, sweeping his eyes from left to right. There were still a lot of unfamiliar faces in the crowd, even after 2.5 months of school. Then, as the last group of kids sat down, Hart saw something he had never noticed before. What Hart saw was the complete 6th grade, almost 400 students. The thought that came to him was like a vision, a burst of understanding. And Hart said to himself, "We're the Palmer kids now." In the town of Brentberry, kids went to kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades at Collins Elementary School or at Newman Elementary School. Like 2 streams tumbling down different sides of the same hill, the Collins kids and the Newman kids bubbled along separately for 6 years. Those 2 streams of children flowed together for the first time at Palmer Intermediate, where they became a swirling pool of 6th graders. Palmer Intermediate School contained the 6th grade, the whole 6th grade, and nothing but the 6th grade. Every fall, it took a couple months for the new 6th graders to stop thinking of themselves as Newman kids or Collins kids. By October and November, it began to sink in. Well, they're Palmer kids now. So Hart was right on time. Hart Evans liked being at Palmer Intermediate. It was so different from elementary school. Part of that had to do with the building. Everything was bigger. Bigger gym, bigger cafeteria, bigger playing fields, and a bigger auditorium with a full stage. Until about 15 years ago, Palmer had been the junior high school, and that's what it felt like. That's also how Palmer School was run. Like a junior high. All the kids had lockers. They had homeroom in the morning and then moved from class to class, subject to subject, teacher to teacher for the rest of the day. It was a whole new school experience. Making the jump to Palmer Intermediate made Hart feel like he was finally getting somewhere. One of Hart's favorite things about Palmer School was that his little sister Sarah was somewhere else. She was in 4th grade now, 2 years behind him back at Collins Elementary. Since her first day of kindergarten, Sarah had been like a piece of gum stuck to the bottom of Hart's shoe. She had never missed a chance to tease or bother or embarrass her big brother. Plus, Sarah was nosy and a huge tattletale. She had never accepted the fact that Hart was the most popular boy at Collins Elementary School, which was true. Sarah didn't understand why everybody liked her brother so much, but clearly they did. Who always had 15 guys crowding around his table at lunch? Hart. Who got picked first at recess for baseball or dodgeball, even though he wasn't the best player? Hart. And who got invited to everybody's birthday party? At least 2 invitations each week, all year long. Same guy, Hart. Sarah knew a different side of Hart Evans. At school, he was Mr. Cool. At home, he was more like a nerd, or maybe a mad scientist. Hart even had his own workbench, which was really just an old corner desk. It had 4 skinny legs and 1 wide drawer that ran across the longest side of the triangular top. He'd spotted the desk at the end of someone's driveway one Saturday morning on the way back from soccer. "Mom, quick, stop the car. I need that desk. It's perfect." "Honey, that's just junk. You already have a nice desk." "But that one's for schoolwork, Mom. I need a place where I can make things and mess around, like for science projects. It'll fit into the corner back by my closet. You won't even know it's there." But his sister Sarah knew it was there. When Hart wasn't home, she would snoop around to see what kind of goofy stuff he was up to, like using the electric drill he'd gotten last Christmas to make tiny holes in pennies and bottle caps and acorns and pencils and just about everything else, like using glue to make sculptures out of nails and chunks of rock and rusty nuts and bolts, like making huge fake boogers out of dried rubber cement, or using bits of blue and green bottle glass to make weird little stained glass windows. and how Hart had melted all those plastic milk jugs into that big lumpy mess. And why did he have so many different kinds of rubber bands? Bags and bags of them. Ever since nursery school, Sarah had been trailing along 2 years behind her brother, and her identity was always discovered. Your last name is Evans, right? That was usually the first question. Then Sarah would see the teacher size her up and slowly put it all together. The shape of her face, her blue eyes and sandy brown hair, and her slim build, and her slightly above average height, just like her brother's. Then the teacher would get this cheery look on her face and say, "Oh, yes, you must be Hart's little sister, right?" And Sarah would nod and smile. By second grade, she had stopped smiling. And in third grade, Sarah had said, "Yes, Hart is my fantastic, wonderful, glorious older brother, and I would appreciate it if no one mentions his name again, ever." Sarah's friends would say, "Hart Evans is your brother? He's so cool." And Sarah had to explain that, based on her observations, Hart was actually a total dweeb. But all that was in Hart's past. Sarah didn't even ride the same bus with him anymore. At Palmer Intermediate School, Hart was on his own. Palmer kids. Looking around at all the sixth graders, Hart wrestled with the idea. He couldn't put it into words, but he got a strange feeling, like he was looking at himself in the rearview mirror of a time machine. He saw that these 400 kids were going to travel into the future with him. These were the kids he'd be on teams with in junior high and high school. They'd go to football games and dances together. They would get their driver's license and go hang out at Peak's Diner. These were the kids he would graduate high school with, these Palmer kids. He was looking at his class, really looking at it for the first time. Then Hart Evans, the visionary seer of the future, remembered the tangled wad of rubber bands in his pocket, and in a split second, he was a sixth grade kid again. Not that Hart had immediate plans to launch a rubber band, no way, not during an assembly, and certainly not from the front row, much too dangerous. Hart hadn't been caught shooting a rubber band in over 2 years, and he planned to keep it that way. No, the rubber bands in his pocket were for later, after lunch, because after lunch it would be time for chorus. And in Hart's opinion, a few well-launched rubber bands were just what the sixth grade chorus needed. Chapter 2, Coolness. Hart swallowed a yawn, but it was a tired yawn, not a bored yawn. He liked assemblies. Sometimes the programs were good, and even if they weren't, an assembly was still pretty much free time. As long as you kept looking straight ahead and didn't shut your eyes, you could think about anything you wanted to for almost an hour, which didn't happen often at school. Up on stage, 2 men and 2 women were dressed in costumes from the 1840s. The guy in the straw hat had a banjo, and the woman wearing blue jean overalls had a guitar. All 4 were singing some songs about the Erie Canal. They were good musicians, and the way they used folk songs to show American history was pretty interesting. But they'd been at it for almost 35 minutes, and it was starting to get old. Hart tuned them out. Another yawn. Hart let his mind drift back a few hours, and he remembered the sound of his noisy water pipes in the wall next to his bed, which was why he'd been awake since 6 a.m. today. That was when his dad had started taking a shower. Hart had tried to go back to sleep, but the automatic coffee maker had already filled the house with the smell of morning. Usually his mom had to pull Hart out of bed at the last second so he could throw on some clothes, drag a comb through his hair, grab a piece of toast and swallow juice, and then sprint to catch the school bus. And as he hurried through the kitchen, Sarah always said something like, "It's so stupid to be late." Not today. Hart was starting a second bowl of cereal when his parents had come into the kitchen a little before 7. His mom had been surprised. "Are you feeling all right, Hardy?" And Hardy said, "I'm fine, Mom. I just woke up early, that's all. And please, stop calling me Hardy, okay?" 15 years on the Erie Canal. Up on stage, the 2 men came out wearing a mule costume and began towing a barge around. Hart smiled, but he kept thinking about the morning.